Another thing that helps is knowing which of the values of the coordinate point are going to be positive and negative. It also might help if you also know which trig functions in each quadrant will be positive every single time. So let's start with x and y values. For the x and y values, it's helpful to know which part of the x and y axis you are looking at in each quadrant. So, as an example, quadrant 1. If we look on our x-axis, we're in the positive part of the x-axis. Same thing on the y-axis here, we're going to be using the positive values. So both x and y will be positive. Okay, what about in quadrant 2? Well, if we take a really close look, on the x-axis, we're going to be using the negative part. So the x values are always going to be negative. The y values are always going to be positive because we're still using the positive part of the y-axis. Now let's take a look at quadrant 3. We're using the negative part of the x-axis, and we're also using the negative part of the y-axis. So both x and y are going to be negative. Now let's take a look at quadrant 4. Quadrant 4 has a little bit of a change. The x values become positive again, but not our y values. Our y values are still negative. So x is positive and y is negative. Now, for knowing which trig functions are going to be positive in each quadrant, we have a little abbreviation, or acronym, or mnemonic, to help you remember which trig functions are going to always be positive. Well, in quadrant 1, since all the values are going to be positive, x and y, every single trig function will be positive in the first quadrant. Okay, so all of them will be positive. In quadrant 2, anything that has x is going to be negative. Anything that has y is going to be positive. Since our sine function is the y value, that means sine is going to be positive. What about in quadrant 3? Well, since both x and y are negative, the only trig function that uses both y and x is tangent, which means that the negatives will cancel out. So tangent is going to be positive in quadrant 3. Last, but definitely not least, in quadrant 4, only the x value is positive. Cosine uses the x value, so cosine is going to be positive in quadrant 4. Now, the little acronym that we use when we're working with these is the following. Okay, ASTC. But we use a mnemonic to remember this. All students take chemistry or any other C-related subject like calculus. Okay, all students take chem. All students take calc. If you remember any of those mnemonic devices, it will help you remember which trig function is positive where on the coordinate plane. This is just helpful information. Feel free to use this if you so desire.